much, everybody. Welcome to Web Browser Automation, or How to Use the Internet Like Johnny 5. This talk is aimed at people at all skill levels. We're going to be ramping people up from beginner level right the way through up to being a black belt in laziness. But those that are more automation affluent already, just bear with us, and we'll get everybody up to speed as quick as possible. Getting the boring stuff out of the way, my name's Dan, or Salty Goat on Twitter. I've been a pen tester for about 3.5 years. Before that, I worked in gigs, live events and touring. I identify as an amateur scripter. None of this stuff is particularly complicated. It's all stuff that I've figured out how to do on my own, just through messing around with stuff. My ethos for this stuff is like, if I can do it, so can you. And I identify as a very, very lazy person, and I'm always aspiring to get lazier. Few basic concepts we're going to have to cover, like I said, to get everybody up to speed. The first one being the internet and stuff. From a very high level, this is how the internet works. We have this lonely pirate that's looking for some lost booty. They go to lostbooty.com. The lostbooty.com server sends the website back to them. But it's important to remember that when the server sends that website back to them, it doesn't actually look like the websites that we're used to seeing. It looks something like this. Now, if this is ugly and unreadable to you, that's because it is ugly and mostly unreadable. And, human beings typically aren't supposed to deal with, information in this way. This is called HTML, for those that have probably heard of it. But what happens is this HTML is then taken and interpreted by something called a web browser, and then it looks something like this. Web browsers being things like Firefox, Chrome, Brave, Edge, whatever flavor you're using. And then, these are sort of designed to be used by human beings instead of the HTML, which is mostly designed to be used by machines. But it is important to remember, and something that we are going to be making use of quite extensively a little bit later on in this talk, is that at any point you can right-click on any sort of element within the web browser, right-click, go to inspect, and then you can actually see the building blocks of that website in your browser. You'll get a little thing that pops up at the bottom, and you can sort of dig into the HTML if you want to, and we're going to need to in a little while. Another quick precursor I want to cover is something called OWASP Juice Shop. You can Google it for more information. We don't have to go too deep into it, but it's basically just a vulnerable web application that is designed to be hosted locally on your own machine, and you can use it to practice hacking and things. And we're going to be using that as the target for some of the scripts we're going to be making in a little while. Automation is a basic concept. The other half of the title of this talk. I'm sure you're all familiar with the concept of automation, but pulling a quote from the hive mind of all human knowledge on the internet, automation is basically the concept of getting somebody or something else to do something that you don't want to do. Specifically with browser automation, it comes in a bunch of different flavors. Most browsers now will have some form of native automation built in, whether it's like Chrome autofill or, Firefox filling in your login details when you log in, that kind of thing. But then you can also get, browser extensions, things like Axiom, which will sit in your browser. You can click record, do things on a website, click stop, and then click play, and it'll replicate what you've just done. You have desktop applications, things like Microsoft Power Automate, which is super powerful. You can automate much more than web browsers with that, but it has like a really powerful web browser sort of corner to it that allows you to, again, automate anything you could possibly want to do in a web browser. Burp Tweet macros for the web app pen testers in the room. If you have a good understanding of them, you have a better understanding of them than I do. But again, they are super powerful, and you can do all kinds of browser automation with those. And then lastly on the list is custom scripting. So, using programming languages like Python, Ruby, and then libraries in them for like Selenium or Water to interact with web browsers from custom scripts. And that's actually what we're going to be focusing on for the remainder of this talk, developing some custom scripts to automate some browser activity. Basic concept scripting. Again, a quote pulled from the hive mind of all human knowledge on the internet. Scripting is a way basically of interacting with a system and getting it to do some things that you don't want to do yourself. So why might we want to script things and automate things? So we might have a mundane, monotonous task that we have to do in web browsers every day, and we can write a script that, again, does that for us, speeds up our day, means that we can focus on other things, or, as I've said at the start, we can aspire to be lazier and do nothing. We can use scripts to achieve the humanly difficult. So again, this example here is if, for web app testers in the room that are exploiting things like access controls, and they want to scroll through invoice numbers to see if they can see invoices that they're not supposed to see, or that kind of thing. Doing that manually would be really boring and would take a lot of time, but we can write a script that cycles through those invoice numbers for us really quickly, and we can test to see if we can see stuff that we're not supposed to. You can do that with, pre-existing tools, but, you will likely to find, if you haven't already at some point in the future, that these pre-existing tools might not be able to do exactly what you need them to do, or, you might need extended functionality on what already exists, which is why it's a very, very powerful skill to have, to be able to make your own custom tools. And it was a real level up moment for me as a pen tester when I gained that ability to, mid-engagement, if I could see something that would potentially be a vulnerability, but that I can't get a proof of concept for it using, Burp or something like that, then I can just write a script and prove that this vulnerability exists with something that I've made myself. And it's a really powerful skill to have. So let's build a script. Today we're going to be working in a programming language called Ruby, because I like working in Ruby. It allows me to work quickly, get my ideas down quickly. And it really irritates Python fanboys when you say, I like to work in Ruby. Python's better. It's like, yeah, maybe it is, but whatever. You can do this in Python, Ruby, Golang, pretty much any flavor of programming language. They'll have some kind of library or module within it that allows you to easily interact with web browsers. But today we're using Ruby. So for our first script, we're going to start off nice and easy. We're going to build a script that allows us to log into a web application, in this case, OWASP DuShop. Now, before I start writing any scripts, I like to take a minute to sort of conceptualize what it is that I'm trying to achieve and break it down into smaller building blocks. And in this case, when we're logging into a web application, we kind of need three components. We need to be able to browse to the web application, so that's the URL at the top. We need to input our credentials, which is our username and password, and then we need to log into the application. So the three sort of goals for our script to conduct those three steps. Step one, nice and easy. Now, we are going to see some code here. Apologies if you get some square eyes, but I promise you that this is less intimidating. Well, sorry, it's easier than it looks. It's more intimidating than it actually is. We'll break it down and you'll find that most of it is actually quite human readable. The first two lines we don't have to dig into too much now, but they are pulling into our script some code that somebody else has written, because again, we like being lazy, that allows us to easily write things into our script to interact with the web browser directly. So that's the first two lines. Line 3, where it says Firefox, water, blah, 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 is us basically initializing one of those scripts those scripts that other people have written to say right, okay, whenever you see the word Firefox, what we are actually saying is interact with this Firefox browser. And then line 4, you can almost read it. Firefox, go to the URL of that web application. So it is actually, quite humanly readable and easy to understand. And that's step one. That takes us to the DuShop application. The next step, we need to submit our credentials, which is a little bit more complicated, but, again, we can break it down and it's actually quite straightforward in concept. So you remember I was saying earlier, you can right-click anywhere on a web application and inspect, and it will show you the building blocks of that web application underneath it. What we've done here, we've right-clicked on the email parameter, and you can see at the bottom there it says input ID equals email. So we know where our credentials need to go. Well, our username needs to go. So then we're going to skip line 5 for a second. We'll come back to it. But on line 6, where it says Firefox text field, where the ID is email, set it to test@test.com. Then we can just do the exact same thing with the password. Field ID equals password, set password. And then we can do the exact same thing with the login button, ID, login button, and then we just click it. Now, just to quickly touch on line 5, that we're doing the same sort of concept where it's a button that we're clicking, but instead of finding it by ID, we're finding it by another parameter called ARIA label. This stuff is really powerful. You can find any element on a page with any sort of identifier that exists within that HTML. We'll dig more into that in a little while, but that's just a welcome banner that pops up and we're getting rid of it because, it gets in the way of us logging in. So that's our first script written. Let's see it in action. So it takes a few seconds for Firefox to wake up and do its thing. I think that video is running. Yeah. And when it does actually kick in, it all goes very quickly. It pops up, it puts in our username and password and logs us into the application in a second without us actually doing anything or interacting with it. So that's all great and life-changing. But what's next? What else can we do with that? So we're going to set ourselves a few little challenges and progress forward into weaponizing that script. We're going to see how that script can make us a little bit lazier in our day-to-day. And we're also going to see how that script can speed things up and let us do things very quick and faster than any human could ever interact with a web application. So first, let's have a look at weaponizing the script. Again, it looks quite intimidating, but when we break it down, lines 6 to 11 there are literally just our login script again. The only difference is on lines 9 and 10 where we're setting the email address and password, instead of setting those to values, our email address and a password, we've got little placeholders at the end that says username and pass. Now those are being populated from line 3 where it says username equals test@test.com. And then the passwords are instead coming from line 4 where it says password list file open passwords.txt. So what we've got here is just a text file containing a bunch of passwords, which you can see on the right where, it says hello, B-sides, leads, etc. And then for each of those passwords in that list, we're going to try and log into the web application with the username test@test.com. And then at line 12, we just have a little if statement, a little bit of logic that says, right, okay, if we don't see on the page that the invalid email or password, then we can infer that those credentials are correct. And then it just puts those correct credentials to the screen. So again, let's see the script in action. It takes a few seconds for Firefox to wake up and do its thing, but when it does, it will start cycling through those credentials and try to log in. Now, if we have any scripters in the audience, they are probably screaming internally now saying this is horrendously inefficient and it's going to take absolutely ages to do things this way. And they are absolutely correct. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on about different ways of doing this type of thing. Video pause? No, it's still going. It's still going. It takes a while, and I want you to remember how long it's taking because again, we're going to address that in a little while. But eventually, maybe this login. There we go, and it puts the credentials that worked to the screen. So we've built a web application login brute forcer using browser automation. We've weaponized the script. So next, we're going to look at lazifying the script. So the challenge we set is, so say that you order a lot of juice from a Wasp Juice shop, and you want to know when your latest order is due for delivery. This one's going to be a little bit more complicated, but again, we can break it down conceptually and build the script around that. So we start with, again, lines 1 to 8 is literally just our login script that we've already built. Line 9 takes us to our order history page. So if we go to the order history page in our Stew Shop, we can see all our orders here, and our latest order is at the top. And to get access to our delivery information for that latest order, we click on that little button in the red square. But when we go to the latest order information, well, we can see in the middle, that's the information that we're trying to get at. But at the top, the URL has a randomly generated ID number in it. So we can't say to our script, just go straight to this last order page because it's going to change every time there's a new order. So what can we do instead? Well, we've just clicked the button to, get to this page. So we can just say to our script, well, just go to that page, click the button and get to this area. But it's a little bit complicated because when we go to that page, there are 3 buttons that all look the same. And then if we inspect those buttons, in terms of the HTML, they look practically identical. There's no ID there's no ID equals button 1, button 2, button 3 or anything like that. So we need to find a good way to track down that information on the page and locate where those buttons are. So to do that, you can build your own roadmap within the HTML on the page and say, right, okay, well, it's included in the body and then it's included in this div and like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, we're trying to be lazy here and that sounds like it's a lot of work. So what we can do instead is if we right-click the element in the console there, go to copy, we can copy something called the XPath, which is just a pre-built roadmap to that element on the page for us. Then we take that, go back to our script, and paste it in on line 10, where it says Firefox element XPath, and then this big roadmap that looks like a bunch of jargon. Now, we don't need to pay too much attention to that value unless, we have issues with it and we have to troubleshoot it. But that's our roadmap to that button pre-built for us. Nice and easy. We can continue to be lazy. Now, we go back to our order history page, find that little bit of information there for the days until the latest delivery, copy the XPath for it, and put it back in the script. Nice and easy. And, the only difference is that on line 11, we've put that bit of information into a little placeholder called day count. And then on line 12, we just print to the screen when our latest order is due for delivery. But again, let's see it in action. That skips through really quickly. There we go. Yeah, so again, it's going to take a few seconds for Firefox to wake up. But when it does, it'll all happen really quickly. It's going to take us to the web application. It's going to log in. It's going to go to the order page, get the information, print it to the screen. And we get to be lazy. So next, anybody that has ever tried to buy a gig ticket online or has ever tried buying any sort of like hype clothing or anything like that will have heard of the term bots. And, people are competing with bots online because they buy things faster than we can. With these skills that we've got now, we can build our own bots. And it's really straightforward. So for this challenge, we're saying like, right, okay, apple juice is a hot commodity in the OWASP juice shop. So it's just restocked and we're going to buy it faster than anybody else can. So again, the script looks big and intimidating, but when you actually sort of go through it line by line, the first 8 lines are again just our login script. And then line 9 onwards is just us finding elements on the page by their XPath or some form of ID file or ID parameter and putting that into the script in order. These scripts are, conceptually designed to mimic human behavior. So when you're sitting down and you're thinking like, right, okay, so if I'm going to buy apple juice from this shop, I go to the apple juice on the page, I add it to cart, then I go to checkout, and then I fill in my address details, I fill in my payment details. That's all each of these steps is doing. It's interacting with the browser in a way that a human would, but we're just automating it so it can be done really quickly. However, a quick tip when you are dealing with a lot of these XPaths, it's it's very difficult for humans to see that and instinctually know what it is on the page. So it's really useful to comment your code and do yourself a favor. And if you're passing the script to anybody else, do them a favor by putting comments in there as well. But anyway, let's have a look at our script, Speedified. Once again, it takes a few seconds for Firefox to wake up. When it does, really quickly logs us into Juice Shop. It adds the apple juice to the cart. It fills in the address details, picks the payment options, and completes the order for us as quick as that. And these things, work the exact same on any sort of live website, production website that you're out there using, trying to buy gigs tickets off or, hype clothing or anything like that. And that's our first script, Speedified. You can do a lot more stuff with browser automation than, just what we've seen here. And as a quick demonstration of, some of those things, I've written a script here that, again, starts off quite similar to our first login script. Apart from on line 3, you'll see that we've changed to Chrome from Firefox. Just to show, these things work the exact same in whatever flavor of browser you're using. What is quite interesting, though, is at the end of that line 3, you can see where it says headless true. So for all the scripts that we've seen so far, you actually see the browser opening up and things flying past on the screen. With headless mode enabled, everything happens in the background, so you don't even have to see what's going on. It doesn't interrupt what you're doing. Things just run in the background and you can continue doing whatever else it is that you're doing with your system. Some other things that are different on line 5. I said earlier that there's a little pop-up box that opens whenever you open OS GShop and you have to close it. So instead of actually clicking on the element, you can just send keystrokes directly to the browser. So here, I'm just sending the escape keyword, the keystroke, and it just closes that pop-up anyway. We're putting in the credentials as normal, and then again, we're sending the enter key to login instead of clicking the login button. And then on line 10, this is doing something really quite powerful. This is executing JavaScript within the context of the browser, even though it's running in headless mode and it's all automated. So, you can do all kinds of fun things with that. You can abuse SSO, things where have integrated authentication. If you can run a script on a machine that is using Edge that is integrated with Microsoft Authentication, you can automate in Edge browsing to an application, doing a thing, and then, pulling the authentication token out of local storage or out of cookies or anything like that, which is what we've done here. We've pulled the authentication token out of the browser's local storage using JavaScript, and then you can pass that around and process it and do whatever else you want with it. But in this case, we've just put it to the screen. But again, we'll just have a quick look at what that looks like in action. This one's going to happen a lot quicker, and you won't actually see anything popping up because Chrome's running in headless mode, but that's just logged us into the application and pulled the authentication token out of local storage and, printed it to the screen. So I wanted to really quickly touch on browser automation versus raw HTTP scripting. So this is for the people that I said earlier that would have been screaming inside when they saw me brute forcing logins with browser automation. So this analogy is, I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but it's basically, if you are using browser automation, you have the browser there doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you on a script. So any sort of headers, tokens, parameters, requests that have to be sent as part of whatever you're trying to achieve and trying to script. If you're interacting with the browser in a human way, then the browser takes care of all that for you. You can do all that with raw HTTP scripting, but you have to then, program in all those requests, all those parameters, all those headers, any tokens, any processing, all that stuff you have to write in yourself. So, like I said, it's a lot more surgical. You have a lot more granular control, but, it takes longer, and sometimes you just want to get a quick proof of concept for a test or something like that. Although, to be fair, and a more accurate comparison is probably, Conan versus this horrific AI-generated picture of Arnie in a lab coat, because anything that you can do with browser automation, you can do with raw HTTP scripts. It's just that, you have to work a little bit harder for it. And a quick example there of, browser automation versus raw HTTP scripting. Writing the script for browser automation, you have lines 6 to 11 there on the left, but all condensed into line 5 on the right. So, you are sort of saving yourself some work there when you are putting this script together, but, it doesn't always work like that, because the login process for this application is nice and easy, but, you might have things that have like multi-stages if it's got like Cognito Auth or anything like that, or, you have to put a little bit more working on the scripting stage for browser automation sometimes, but like I said, you get the browser doing the heavy lifting for you then. But I did want to quickly show off what it looks like brute forcing logins with that script on the right there, with raw HTTP scripting. If you cast your mind back to how quick it was when we were brute forcing the login with the browser automation, it took forever. With this, it's done. So, there's a right tool for every job, basically. I think I've got a little bit of time. I can show off some extracurricular scripts, or I can leave time for questions. I don't know what people would prefer. Scripts, maybe? some of the fun scripts I've been working on. Yeah, cool. I don't have like demo recordings of them, but I can just kind of show you them really quickly and you can see what they look like and I can talk you through what they do. This first one is designed to spam a Microsoft Teams chat with cowboy emojis, all through browser automation. This one will automate your status in Microsoft Teams and toggle you through active and inactive and stuff, depending if people are sat there watching what you're doing for the day. This one is a personal favourite of mine. This one will sit and wait.
I think.
No, sure. You want to see the cowboy thing, right?
Yeah, I want to see. I can attest to the cowboy thing, by the way.
Sorry, I didn't realise that was happening.
Yes, it was either spam.
That's the cowboy one. Spams a team chat with cowboy emojis. That is the one that toggles your status in Teams so you can hide what it is that you're actually doing. This one is a personal favourite of mine because it sits and waits until somebody starts typing a message to you and then it instantly calls them. So it does nothing but cause that person crippling anxiety, but it's fun. Things that are like actually legitimately useful. This one is a LinkedIn scraper that will pull usernames from LinkedIn and compile them ready, for use in other attacks and stuff. This little bit in the middle is probably one of the best bits of code that I've ever written because whilst the script is still running, a little guy pops up and dances on the screen to let you know that the script is running in the background. And then this one is also really, really useful. It integrates with Telegram and it will sit and watch a web page. And then whenever there is any web change on that web page, like something comes back in stock or a new thing is updated, somebody posts, it pings to your Telegram on your phone to say, this has changed, this has happened, you might want to look at it and do something. So yeah, pretty much done there. All that's left is TLDR. If you can do something in a web browser, you can and maybe should automate it. I've been Dan, aka Salty Goat on Twitter. Thanks for listening.